that'll be great.
Maisa Khatib, professor from Arizona, no, I should say College of Health Solutions, Arizona State University.
Great, thank you.
This is how you pronounce my name, Maisa Khatib.
Wow, you know that also? Great, thank you. Thank you.
She has to be welcomed
नाम मिलेगा ना बस
at the end of our own people or before
नहीं
that?
जब आप शुरू में नाम लोगे मैं तो इसका लिखवाया ना
नहीं, so basically,
इनको फ्लोरे करना है कि नहीं ये पूछ रहे हो
नहीं, we don't have.
वी डोंट हैव तो फिर बात खत्म
So I'll announce it towards the very end after you.
नहीं नहीं
Before.
इन
Okay.
दोनों को शी इज आल्सो प्रोफेसर ना तो
And his wife has also come.
मदर एंड दिस
Mother.
एक तो मदर है ना
Mother तो मुझे बताया नहीं.
बस मदर बोल दो मदर का नाम पूछ क्या दिव्या मैम को पता है दिव्या
तो
मैम
फिर
के रिलेटिव
फिर मैं his mother ही बोल देते हैं.
नहीं नहीं कलीग है वो नाम बता दिया
फोटो भेजा था मुझे लेके फिर ये मैं कैसे भेजूँ ये इंट्रोडक्शन के टाइम पर अगर चला सकते कि हाँ मैं बोल देती हूँ बच्चों को अगर वो कर सकते हैं एडजस्ट हाँ तो किसको शेयर करना है
मदर का नाम तो ना पूछ के आओ
ना मैं प्राशा को शेयर कीजिए मैं
प्राशा को अच्छा ठीक है
May I please request everyone to kindly stand for the national anthem.
गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तब शुभ नामे जागे तब शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तब जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 जय
Thank you, everyone. A very good evening to the honorable dignitaries on the dais and the entire gathering. On behalf of Delhi Technological University, I, Dr. Yashna Sharma, warmly welcome you all to the third lecture of DTU's Distinguished Speaker Series. The great poet P.B. Shelley once said, "The mind in creation is as a fading coal, with some invisible influence, like an inconstant wind, awakens to transitory brightness." This quote truly highlights the transformative brilliance of inspiration and intellectual exchange. DTU's Distinguished Speaker Series is one such initiative of our university to invite distinguished speakers in India and around the globe to enrich the academic ecosystem of our university. This speaker series is an opportunity for all of us to engage with distinguished speakers whose insights and perspectives will enrich not only our professional and academic lives, but also our personal journeys. We hope that this series of talks will foster collaboration, curiosity, and progress and will be an opportunity for all of us to listen, learn, and be inspired. To initiate today's session, I would like to request our honorable dignitaries on the dais to kindly illuminate the ceremonial lamp.
कुन्देन्दु तुषार हार धवला या शुभ्र वस्त्रावृता या वीणा वरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेत पद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युत शङ्करा प्रभृतिभिः देवैः सदा वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेष जाड्यापहा.
Thank you. We would now like to extend a floral welcome to our distinguished speaker for the day, Professor Arvind Singhal, a distinguished professor, a visionary thinker, and an inspiring author. We thank him for his presence today with us. It's really a matter of great pride for us to have him with us today. We also welcome his mother, who has graced us with her kind presence, and she's here with us. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. We also welcome Professor Maisa Khatib, Professor, College of Health Solutions, Arizona State University, who has kindly joined us today. Thank you very much for joining us. We are also honored to have with us on the dais Professor Prateek Sharma, Honorable Vice Chancellor of the Delhi Technological University, Professor Madhusudan Singh, Registrar, Delhi Technological University, Professor S. Indu, Dean Digital Education and Chairperson of the DSS Committee, Professor Yasha Hasija, Associate Dean, Alumni Affairs, Delhi Technological University. Thank you everyone for joining us today. May I now request Professor Prateek Sharma, Honorable Vice Chancellor, DTU, to kindly deliver the welcome address.
Thank you, Dr. Yasha. So, wish you all a very happy new year. We are meeting for the first time in this new year. So, wish you all a very, very happy and healthy new year to all of you. So, it's a real pleasure and privilege to have Dr. Singhal amongst our midst. In fact, this is a series, as I mentioned informally earlier, we had started this series with an objective to typically, especially in the context of engineering institution like Delhi Technological University, where all of us are actually involved in our disciplinary domains. That is and in fact, you know, the rigor and the commitments that we have, all the faculty members, the students, that we are not able to spend time beyond our disciplinary boundaries. So the focus remains very much intense in that domain itself. So the idea was to have, speakers who actually have distinguished themselves in different domains and share their experiences with the faculty members, staff members, and students. And the idea was basically primarily to expand the perspective and the, perspective of each one of us. And in fact, you know, the kind of participation that we have seen and the support that we have received from faculty members across all departments is really gives us a lot of motivation and inspiration to continue with this series in a more encouraging manner, in the sense that keep inviting people like Dr. Singhal, who basically, again, because we have to, every single time, we have to identify a speaker who is able to generate the same enthusiasm and interest amongst the audience. So it should not become just a routine exercise, where just for the sake of doing a lecture series, we are doing a lecture series. And in fact, that we have always maintained, because in case we have not been able to get a speaker of that caliber, we have not actually continued in that particular month. So I'm very happy that Dr. Singhal also happens to be our proud alumnus from Department of Mechanical Engineering, 1983 batch. And in fact, so it's a real pleasure, sir, to have you. And on behalf of the entire DTU fraternity, students, staff members, teaching, non-teaching, I welcome you. And please, God bless you all. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, sir. It is my honor to introduce you all to the distinguished speaker for the day, Professor Arvind Singhal, a renowned professor, our distinguished alumnus, and an inspiring author. Professor Singhal is the Samuel Shirley and Edna Holt Marston Endowed Professor of Communication and the Director of the Social Justice Initiative at the University of Texas at El Paso. He also holds additional appointments as the William J. Clinton Distinguished Fellow at the Clinton School of Public Service, Little Rock, Arkansas, Distinguished Professor, Faculty of Business Administration and Social Sciences, Inland University of Applied Sciences, Norway, and Chancellor's Honorary Professor at MIT University, India. Dr. Singhal teaches and conducts research on the diffusion of innovations, the positive deviance approach, organizing for social change, the entertainment education strategy, and liberating interactional structures. He is a co-author of 14 books, out of which 3 books have received awards for distinguished applied scholarship. In addition, he has authored over 225 peer-reviewed essays in outlets such as the American Journal of Public Health, Journal of Communication, Communication Theory, Communication Monographs, and many others. He is the winner of the top paper awards from the American Public Health Association, the International Communication Association, and National Communication Association over a dozen times, and the Ohio University's Baker Research Award twice. He is also the proud recipient of the Communication Research as Collaborative Practice Award, the Communication Researcher as an Agent of Change Award, and the 2007 Human Rights Award, along with the Everett M. Rogers Award for outstanding contributions to entertainment education. He has previously taught at many prestigious universities, such as the Ohio University, the University of Southern California, the University of California at Los Angeles, and has held visiting professorships around the globe. It is really our honor to have such a renowned person amongst us today. I please request him to deliver his lecture. Thank you.
चल सकता हूँ क्या? ठीक है, because I want to. No, no laptop. Can I put this here? Excellent. Thank you very much. Is my voice coming through? Those of you at the back, if you can hear me, if you would just raise your hand. All right, okay, good. Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor Prateek Sharma, distinguished guests on the dais. I recognize my mother, who had the good wisdom to send me to what was then Delhi College of Engineering. My brother, Aditya, who's also an alumnus of Delhi College of Engineering, civil engineering. some of you may know this, perhaps not. Divya is my sister, and so happy that I could revisit DTU through, in some ways, your reputation and your connection. Is it okay if I deliver my talk from here? Is it okay? Yeah? I don't need to be behind. I'm audible? Okay, good. And now I'm fully exposed, no? Nowhere to hide behind a podium. So I want to begin, I think the topic is there. You know, when you come to Delhi University's Delhi College of Engineering and have a background in physics, chemistry, mathematics, you are working in the world of technical problem solving. And my journey has been somewhat different, perhaps, than the journey of my friends like Anil Thakur, who's here, who was in the same batch, 1983, mechanical engineering, who follow a sort of a technical career. I, after doing my bachelor's degree in engineering, was perhaps the only student who went on to do a master's degree in arts. So my master's degree was in radio, television, and film production. And Prateek ji was talking about diversity of perspectives. And you may ask the question, how can a bachelor's student of engineering end up doing a master's degree in radio, television, and film production? The truth, sir, and I'll disclose this openly now, is because I wasn't a very distinguished student of engineering. I graduated, I had a first division, I did reasonably well, but my passion at that time was radio and writers at All India Radio and at Delhi Doordarshan, and a role model for all the students who are here. Would the students raise their hands just so that we know how many of you are here? I see 1. I see 12. Are there other students? Okay, good. Okay, they are rising. They are shy, I think. You are all students. Okay, raise your hand then. All right. Okay, good. So my formal education initially was in technical subjects. My grandfather, paternal, was a professor of mathematics. My maternal grandfather was a professor of ceramics and glass at BHU. My father was an engineer from Roorkee, worked for the Indian Railways. My brother is an engineer, so I also, you sort of get into that stream. And if you are trained in technical ways, which I was, then you have an appreciation for what we call precision. Yeah? I remember being in the smithing shop and working on a lathe. Anil, you may remember in our workshop, trying to create a screw with a certain tolerance. Precision was highly, highly important. You know, we learned about calculus and we learned Newton's laws and, you know, force equals mass times acceleration. Very, very precise. Prediction, control, precision, measurement. And the answers, you had to arrive at a correct answer. No? If you're testing the strength of materials, you know, can a certain concrete structure withstand a certain amount of load? You've got to be very, very precise. But I have moved on. So I do, in some ways, keep with me some of those nuggets of technical wisdom and an appreciation for that, but also at the same time, a little more interest in what is uncertain. a little more interest in what is complex, a little more interest in what is unpredictable, a little more interest in what is not controllable. And so that's been my journey, and with your permission, if you give me permission, I would like to talk about what that journey has yielded for me. And I work with an approach to problem solving now, which is called the positive deviance approach to change. So with your permission, I'd like to spend a little time telling you about this journey of mine, and also at the same time show you how it's a way of solving very complex social problems in a sphere that is very uncertain, uncontrollable, and yet at the same time you can address these issues. So this is a question for the students. How tall was Abraham Lincoln? Anybody? 5'7"? Okay, we've got one answer, 5'7". Who wants to provide a different answer? 5'5", okay. Let me just say he was a tall president. 6'5", 5'9". I think some of you are trying tukas, but nothing wrong with it. I mean, guesswork is an important. President Abraham Lincoln was 6 feet, 4.5 inches tall. He was the tallest U.S. president. Does anybody know what number he was? I mean, the 13. Was he 13 or 14? Okay, we can double check that. But yes, he was there a long time ago. So, President Lincoln, is it okay if I walk here, sir? President Lincoln presided over the Union, the United States of America, during a time that was very difficult for the country. And it was the Civil War between the North and the South. The South wished to preserve slavery. The North didn't want to. They wanted to get rid of slavery. And that was one important contentious point, that the U.S. had a civil war. And there was mass casualties in the Civil War. So much so that if you lived in the continental United States at that time of what was the US, almost 1 person out of 10 adults, men, were a casualty, either dead or maimed. So it took a very heavy toll of the country. And during one of the very important battles, the Battle of Gettysburg. I don't know how many of you have heard about the Battle of Gettysburg, but President Lincoln's speech at the Battle of Gettysburg, 272 words, are etched in stone at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. And at that battlefield, he basically was talking about the burden that he faced as the president, because he was making a decision to keep the country together, to go for war so that the country could be together. And it's here in this battlefield that a Union soldier walked up to him. Walked up to President Lincoln. Anil, how tall are you? Anil is 5'4". Aditya, how tall are you? Aditya is 5'9". I think my brother may be exaggerating just a little bit, but maybe not. When Lincoln was asked by a Union soldier who walked up to him and said, "Mr. President, how tall are you?" Lincoln's answer, and I'd like you to pay attention to it. The question was what? "Mr. President, you are tall. How tall are you?" A technical, precise answer would be what? "I am 6 feet, 4.5 inches tall." Lincoln's answer was not that. Lincoln's answer, when the question was asked, "Mr. President, how tall are you?" was, "Son," put his arm on the soldier's shoulder, "like you, son, like you, I'm tall enough that my feet reach the ground. Okay? I want you to think about that a little. So my journey, sir, from a technical field to a field of social sciences is represented in this small answer by President Lincoln. So many of us who are trained to think in a certain way, precision, control, measurement, tolerance, will always give very precise answers, and that's the reason why we argue so much. What Lincoln is telling us, in my opinion, in this story, is no matter if you're the president, which he was, no matter if you are the commander-in-chief, which he was, no matter the fact that he was a tall man, which apparently he was, and that's the reason why the question was posed to him, his response was still relational. Son, like you, tall enough that my feet reach the ground. And that's maybe the reason why he was known as the greatest president. Because he, with deep and great humility, served his people and his nation despite being president, commander-in-chief, and a very tall man. How does this sound like sort of a preface to my talk? Yeah, okay, should I keep proceeding? Theek? Okay. Let's give another example. A few days ago, I went to Gandhi Smriti. And this is a question for our young students. How many of you living in Delhi have been to Gandhi Smriti? Anybody? It's on 30 January Lane. We have one hand up. Okay, if you haven't, I would encourage you to go to Gandhi Smriti. It's on 30 January Lane. It's the house of Bapu. You may or may not agree with what he said or did. There are lots of people who think in different ways. But it is a place, I think, worth Gandhi Smriti. One of the things that talks to you is Bapu's humility. Humility. We know he was a trained lawyer from England who used to wear stiff collars and bow ties and three-piece suits. And we know for the last 40 years of his life what he was like. He lived a life of voluntary simplicity. And you know, let's ask this, do you know what class of service he traveled by in train? Did he travel first class? No? Yes? Did Bapu travel first class? Once he did. How did he usually travel? It's good that you know that once he traveled first class, he ordinarily traveled third class. Okay? So if he traveled first class once, he traveled third class thousands of times. And people of my grandparents' generation would ask Bapu, Bapu, why do you travel third class? Is that a good question to ask the father of the Indian nation? Because we as a country can do better, right? Bapu, why do you travel third class? And his response, this is the same type of question as, Mr. Lincoln, you're tall, how tall are you? Bapu's answer always, when the question was, Bapu, why do you travel third class? We can do better. His answer was, I travel third class because, as you know, there is no fourth class. But this is not the way we are trained to think. Anna? Now we have a little bit more silence. I think you, maybe. Yeah. Maybe that's the reason why I decided not to be behind the lectern and to get a little closer to you. What was his response? I travel third class because there is no fourth class. And it was this sensibility, a different sensibility than how we are raised, which created the conditions for all of us here to say that we live in a free India. Maybe you're saying, really? Some of you may know about the Salt March, 1930. How long Bapu walked? 240 miles, 420 kilometers, from Sabarmati Ashram to Dandi. Do you know how much time it took? Now let's get technical. How much time do you think it takes for a 61-year-old man to walk from Sabarmati Ashram to Dandi? 1 day? 24 days, okay. Good, 24 days. Why salt? Why did he take on the British government for salt? Because the British government, they taxed many things, but salt was one commodity that the British government, or the East India Company and the British government, had complete monopoly on. The production, packaging, marketing, distribution of salt was controlled by the British government. So Bapu, he's a lawyer. He's a lawyer, right? He writes a note to, does anybody know who the Viceroy in India was in 1930? Lord Irwin, exactly, thank you. We just were at Lady Irwin College this morning. Lord Irwin receives a letter from Bapu which says, Dear brother Irwin, is like son, like you. And he says, the British, Her Majesty's government, taxes a lot of things in India, but I, on the grounds of deep morality, request you to repeal the tax on salt. And then you'd say, why morality with salt? Because he makes an argument that every Indian human needs salt to survive. In fact, Gandhi's argument was that if you are a poor person, you need more salt because you are sweating it out in the fields some more. Yes? So you need more salt. And if the British government taxed salt, by taxing salt, which is required more by poor people, here he's being very precise, you are placing a differential burden on the poorest of the poor. So his argument was, based on a technical criteria, I ask you to repeal the tax on salt. But Bapu always made his intentions very clear, open, transparent. He said, and should Her Majesty's government choose not to repeal the tax on salt, I will march to the sea and I will claim the salt that occurs naturally in India on the sea coast in rocks as my own. And he created a small, you can say, slogan. And that slogan was, I want the help of anybody who wants to help for this fight of might against right. It is my right to have the salt that is produced in my country. And so on the day, 24th day, when he arrives at Dandi, you know that C. Rajgopalachari is launching a similar march with tens of thousands of people that arrives near Chennai. We have a 6,000, now we can be precise, we have a 6,000 kilometer coastline, seawater, reservoirs of salt. And Babu Rajendra Prasad is doing a similar thing. And Chittaranjan Das is doing a similar thing. They are all arriving very coordinated in a certain location. And when Bapu bends down in the morning and claims that this is my salt, I claim this as a right, there are tens of thousands of leaders who are doing the same, and somebody's estimated that there were about 12 million Indians. How much is that in crores? 1.2 crores. Who were on India's seacoast, boiling seawater in kettles. And even though the quality of the salt may not have been very good, but when Indians began to boil seawater in a kettle, the foundations of the British Empire began to shake. Okay, so I'm showing you in some ways, technically you can say, let's fight the British, we've got rifles and cannons or swords and, okay. Or you can take them on with salt satyagraha. And when 350 million Indians who all need salt begin to claim it as their own, the social fabric of the nation with respect to the notion of Swadesh, the notion of Swarajya, began to take hold. Are you with me so far? I had not intended to go a little deep into this, but now I have a sense that some of you are listening, and that is important. So, technicality has its place, but the non-technical, the symbolic, salt, Swarajya, Swadeshi, these are communicative concepts. They have their place as well. So for Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Swarajya was what? Swarajya, you would write in the Kesari. Swarajya was our own government. For Bapu, Swarajya was very different. If you go to 30 January Lane and spend some time there, for Bapu, Swarajya was Rajya over self. That's where peaceful, non-violent, non-cooperation, ahimsa comes. You need to be trained in a way so that you can control yourself, not technically, but with rigor, with discipline, so that if the British Sipahi is cracking your head with a lathi, you say, okay, brother. Okay, brother. As we know, happened, right? And that is in some ways a communicative way of a social movement, perhaps launching. Okay. So now let me tell you a little bit about the positive deviance approach. This is an approach that I work with which brings together the technical and the non-technical to solve very complex social problems. What are complex social problems? How are they different from technical problems? If there is darkness in this auditorium, all you need to do is what? Flip a switch and there'll be light. If you need more light, flip another switch or bring in, a generator technical solutions. If you want to, as we say, carpenter's rule, no? Measure twice, cut once. That's the carpenter's rule, precision. We know how to cut a piece of wood, how to shape a metal, how to design a transistor, how to design trillions of transistors, how to create a leg which would substitute for somebody who has amputation. You need tremendous technical skills for that. We have formulas for that. We have formulas for how a plane should go and come down and land safely. There's tremendous amount of prediction and control in these kinds of systems. But if I asked you, what is the formula for raising a good child? Does anybody have a formula? I can ask my mother. What is the formula that each and every student who comes to the portals of DTU feels that they are heard, seen, respected, valued? Is there a technical formula that you can give them in a gutti as they are entering DTU? Okay, we see you, we hear you. Okay, so this is the complex world that we live in, the social world, where things are not so precise, where we don't give accurate feedback. Somebody says, how are you? You say, I'm fine, when you know you're not fine. We human beings don't behave like rivets or like screws. You may be very angry inside, but maybe it's your teacher, so you just, and then inside you are saying, dekh lunga tujhe. Right? This is human nature. So how do you operate in a world where the feedback that you receive is not accurate? Can you imagine a steel bar that doesn't give you accurate feedback? So the world of precision works very well in one sphere, when you're dealing with physical objects. But how do you create the conditions that a child doesn't break down? What strength of materials theory, load-bearing theory would you apply? Yeah? Are these questions important questions to ponder? How do you fix? We have engineers here. 41% of children under the age of 5 in India are malnourished. How do we fix this problem? It's been a problem that hasn't really gotten much better. And you may think, kya hai, unko chana khilao, gud khilao, dal khilao, palak khilao. How come 35% of the women in India are anemic? Lack of iron. Yeah? So I want to talk a little bit about this world and how do you create the conditions for solving such problems. So I have been experimenting with an approach called the positive deviance approach. It's completely based on data, but it operates in a very different way than how we are taught to think. And may I share an example with you so that you get an idea about the positive deviance approach. So I've been working with this approach for 20 years. I'll give you an example. The positive deviance approach believes in the fundamental premise that any complex social problem that you're trying to solve has already been solved. Okay? It begins with the premise that the problem that you're trying to solve has already been solved by the community. So let's say you are working with a poor community. Could be maybe a district in the state of Bihar. The positive deviance approach will say that the problem of malnutrition that you're trying to solve is already solved within that community in Bihar. And it does so by asking a question which has never ever before been asked, which we are not trained to ask. And if you, I have a mentor, his name is Otto Skama, teaches at MIT. He's a change theorist. And Otto Skama says, we grow in the direction of the questions we ask. Okay, I want you to think about it. We grow in the direction of the questions we ask. The positive deviance approach asks a question which has never ever before been asked. So if you're trying to address the problem of malnutrition in a certain district of Bihar, in a certain community, you will ask the following question. Because you're dealing with children under the age of 5, that's how you look at malnourishment. You will ask the question, are there children under the age of 5? You're looking at the target group. Are there children under the age of 5 who come from the poorest of poor families? Who come from the poorest of poor rural families and who are well nourished. Are you with me? Are there children under the age of 5 who come from bilkul garib nidhan parivar se and who are well nourished? This is a question that's typically never asked. Why? Because you would assume that children who come from very, very poor families are going to be malnourished. That's the regression, prediction and control. You will assume that those children who come from good families, jinke 6 gaye hain, 4 bakri hain, they are going to be well nourished. But here we've asked a question that nobody's asked before. Are there children who come from the poorest of poor families who are well nourished? And even if you find 2 families out of 100 or 1,000 where children of poor households are well nourished, we call them the positive deviants. It's completely data driven. Deviants because they are deviation from the norm. What's the norm? The norm is they are malnourished. You call them positive deviants because they've solved the problem. So the premise is, logically, that the answer to the solution that you are looking for is already here. You don't need to bring in an expert. You don't need to bring in a president, a commander-in-chief, a very tall person, a big expert to solve that problem, because these poor people have already solved the problem. Does that make sense? इन्हें तो solve कर दिया है ना? इनके बच्चे are well nourished, and they are well nourished in this context. So if they are well nourished in this context, figure out what the heck are they doing, which is uncommon. ठीक? Logical? Yes? Yes? Figure out what the heck are they doing that's uncommon. Because if you can figure that out, and you know that they don't have extra resources, then the answer is there. Right? So, between the year 1990 and 1997, this same question raised in Vietnam, where 65% of the children under the age of 5 in the year 1990 were severely malnourished. By 1997, Vietnam had completely solved its malnutrition problem using this positive deviant approach. They began work in 4 communities which expanded to 60,000 communities. And in the first 4 communities, they asked the question, are there children who come from the poorest of poor families who are well nourished? And they find a few, no more than 2-3%. And now you try to understand through research, what is it that they are doing that others are not doing? And in Vietnam, they found what? Are Baba, this child shouldn't have been healthy. How come? What is the mother doing? And they go, they look, they see, they observe, what is happening, and they say, you wouldn't believe what this mother does. Acha, what does this mother do? In the context of Vietnam, they found that this mother, the uncommon practice was she would add the greens, the leaves of sweet potato plants. Shakarkandi ke patte, in the pho, in the soup, or in the rice. And then you say, what? But sakarkandi ke patte to nahi khate hain hum. We don't eat sakarkandi. And that is the way our brain is structured. Sakarkandi means sakarkandi. Who cares about the patta? In this case, this mother was adding the greens of sweet potato plants. And now you can put on your technical hat and you can say, what is in these? What is in these greens? And then you say sweet potato. Leaves have vitamin A, beta carotene. They have all the minerals that we give our children. Drop. Calcium, magnesium, selenium. Oh my God, this mother has solved the problem. Shakarkandi ke patte, which are there in plenty. Then another, like what's happening with this child? Oh, this mother, she spends 30 seconds extra in the field, in her rice field. Rice field, has a lot of water. Rice field has teeny tiny shrimps and crabs and snails and shellfish. This mother would spend 30 seconds extra. She would put a net in her paddy field, scoop up teeny tiny shrimps and crabs. And she would come home, remove the crust, and what do you get? You get pulp. And what is pulp? It's protein. And she would add it to her child's meals. Vietnam is full of rice fields. The resource to solve the problem and the wisdom to solve the problem is right there. Yeah? Why didn't Vietnamese people use this wisdom and this resource? Because the common perception is children cannot handle crustaceans, which is correct. A child by themselves cannot eat a crab or a shrimp, but a mother can play that role. Also, the perception is that you don't eat these teeny tiny keede makode or shrimps and crabs from the rice fields. You go to the river, no? Go to the sea. Wahan pe, you get these big shrimps and crabs. This mother has solved the problem. You get the idea? So, in Vietnam, by applying the positive deviance approach, by asking a question, flipped question, and you can see Gandhiji in this question, because you are asking, what's the fourth class? Right? The poorest of the poor. If Gandhiji had not posed the question, what do the fourth class care about? Salt, he would not have gotten the answer, salt. Likewise, in Vietnam, the children get their protein and their nutrition because somebody dared to ask the question, are there some children who against all odds are well nourished? ठीक? ये approach थोड़ा अंदाजा हो गया? And then they were able to scale this, right? Because the resources are there, the wisdom is there. You don't need to bring experts from Denmark who then give you protein supplements and biscuits, and then you create a warehouse, and now you hire land cruisers and experts and, create a distribution system Because the shrimps and crabs are right there. The sweet greens are right there. I'll give you one small example from India. I have worked with this approach in almost 50 countries, addressing complex social problems such as HIV and AIDS control. I have worked with communities to look at how do people manage their diabetes. Because there are always some people who do better. And you may ask the question, what is it that they are doing? I have worked with this approach looking at the issue of teenage pregnancy. Very complex. I have worked with this approach looking at hospital-acquired infections. How can one reduce hospital-acquired infections? And the fundamentals of the approach are always following a question that has never, ever before been asked. So in the case of diabetes control, we ask the question, I live on the US-Mexico border, there's a very high prevalence of diabetes. And you know in India, there's a very high prevalence of diabetes. And the question we asked is, are there some families, some men or women, over the age of 40, who have a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, who come from poor families, who don't have medical insurance, and whose A1C, you know A1C? Yeah, it's a measure of how well you're controlling your diabetes, whose A1C is less than 6 without any medication. This is a question we typically never ask. And then, out of a group of 800 people, we found 4 people who have solved the problem. Precision through data. Are there men and women over the age of 40? These are all variables who don't have medical insurance, who have a diagnosis, whose A1C levels are less than 6, and who do not take any medication. It's completely a variable sieve, right? And if you find 4 out of 800, that's 0.5%. Deviate, I mean, this is 3 standard deviations away from the mean, right? And they have solved the problem. So now you figure out what the heck are they doing. Do you know what we found? Do you want to know? What was the solution? The uncommon practice. It will surprise you because it's such a simple practice. The uncommon practice that we found for those who are managing their diabetes well was that when they got their diagnosis of diabetes, they disclosed it openly to their family members. Disclosed it openly to their family members. Now you may say, really? What difference does that make? Well, we dug deeper. If you disclose to your family members, I have diabetes, then when you're ready to eat that gulab jamun or rasgulla, your daughter may send her daughter, and as you are about to eat that big dollop, your little grandchild may say, Nanu, So one-time self-disclosure creates the conditions for lifetime of an ethic of care. Now you go to your friend's place, they say, laddu to nahi khaoge. Khaoge to thoda khaoge. Everybody is looking after your health. How many of us who are in this room who have diabetes openly disclose we have diabetes? Okay, I'm just asking. And the disclosure is a small communicative act which ripples into an ethic of care for all your life. Hari Baba re, itna aasan hai. This is what data is telling us. So, in essence, what I'm saying is, let's appreciate the technical. Let's appreciate all the work that all of you are doing here, as I did for 4 years and as my brother did for 5. Yeah, because we were the first batch of 10 plus 2. Abhi sir, you were 10 plus 2, 4 years. But also at the same time, for us to create this sensibility of asking, what is it that would make a mass movement? And where you say salt. And why salt? Because the poor people need it more than the rich. What is it that would solve a problem in Vietnam or in Texas, where I am, whether it's malnutrition or diabetic control? Can we use data to figure out where to look and then unearth what the uncommon practices are? Because by definition, the problem has been solved, and solved with no extra resources. So I will end this talk, with your permission, by saying, well, maybe it's good to quote Robert Frost, a poet. Should I end with I was at Visva Bharati yesterday, Tagore's home, poetry, Gitanjali. Maybe I cannot quote Gitanjali in Bangla, but I can quote Robert Frost in English, with your permission. I want you to pay attention. Poets can do this beautifully. Robert Frost, and we know Pandit Nehru on the table, his office work table, had a poem by Robert Frost. And the poem was what? You can see it in Teen Murti if you go to his Bhavan, Nehru Smriti. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, and I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep. So Robert Frost, when it comes to the work that we are talking about, positive deviance, he had a beautiful line. He said, we, people who are technocrats, we dance around the ring, let's say a fire ring, and suppose. Na? ये answer है, ये answer है, ये answer है. We dance around the ring and suppose, and the truth sits in the middle and knows. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for that wonderful, wonderful lecture. And may we briefly open the house for any questions, please.
It's opened up a whole new set of ideas. In fact, I'm making my notes also.
Thank you, sir, for that very inspiring and enlightening lecture. I'm sure this lecture has widened our perspectives and helped all of us to learn some very important life lessons. You've truly taught us how to see the unseen, look beyond the conventional technical knowledge of this world, to question and to seek solutions. Thank you very much. I would now like to request Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, to kindly felicitate our guest, Professor Arvind Singhal.
So much to learn from you.
Sir,
Something
sir,
really.
I was also taught statistics in the conventional way.
I know.
I learned to valorize, measures of central tendency.
Yes, yes.
This has been a full circle for me.
Absolutely.
Because for complex social problems.
It's very much, and there's something which we do in flood forecasting is the extreme value theory. We're talking about the extreme value. Yeah, so
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I hope you'll enjoy.
Sir. Oh, okay. Determined. Wow. Okay.
Such a pleasure, such a pleasure.
शुरू में मुझे थोड़ी अपनी आवाज़ रेज करनी पड़ी, as you saw. I had to walk a little because management of an audience is critical.
It's required. It's very much required. I have to.
तो वो इसीलिए मैंने कितने हाथ खड़े किए. You know all this. Oh my God. अरे वाह. Does it have the DTU logo?
Yes, yes, yes.
अरे.
Very much.
Ooh.
Very much.
We thank you once again, sir, for taking out the time to be with us today and for teaching us some of the very valuable life lessons. I think they mean a lot for our students. Thank you so much. May I now please request Professor Yasha Hasija, Dean Alumni Affairs, to kindly deliver the vote of thanks.
A very good evening, everyone. Respected dignitaries on the dais, Dr. Arvind Singhal, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir, Professor Prateek Sharma, Professor Madhusudan Singh, our Registrar, our very distinguished alumni, Mr. Aditya and Mr. Anil, Professor Maisa Khatib, our distinguished guests, all our deans, heads, faculty members, students, everybody present here. It is both an honor and privilege for me to stand before you and deliver this vote of thanks after this truly enriching and thought-provoking session. We've been fortunate to be part of an event that not only broadened our horizons, but also sparked new ideas and perspectives. First and foremost, I'd like to express our heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Arvind Singhal, our distinguished speaker for today, for graciously taking out time to be with us today. Your insightful and inspiring words have left an indelible mark on all of us. We are deeply grateful for your generosity in sharing your knowledge and expertise and for providing us with your invaluable takeaways that will guide us in our professional as well as personal journeys. We look forward to more opportunities to engage with you in the future, and we hope that the ideas shared today will inspire us all and aim higher to achieve greater heights. Words fall short to thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir, Professor Prateek Sharma, whose vision and foresight made this event possible. This initiative of Distinguished Speaker Series was truly his brainchild, and it is so fulfilling to see Sir's vision blossoming into reality. His commitment to nurturing an environment of continuous learning and innovation is evident in the many initiatives conceived by Sir's vision. May I please request silence? In only a span of a year, university has grown many-fold, traversing through the path shown by Sir's intellectual supremacy and leadership. I would also like to extend my deepest gratitude to our Registrar, Professor Madhusudan Singh, whose unwavering support ensures the smooth functioning of every event and activity at DTU. His contributions are invaluable to the success of the university. I must take this opportunity to acknowledge the dedicated efforts of Professor S. Indu, Dean Digital Education and Chairperson of this committee, who has been the backbone behind organizing this event. My thanks goes out to Professor Vishal Verma, Dean Alumni Affairs in absentia, and all the committee members, Professor Ram Singh, Professor Anil Singh Parihar, Professor S.C. Sharma, Dr. Yashna, Dr. Trasha, Dr. Deepika, and Dr. Sumit. Their meticulous planning and efforts have made this event a success. I would also express my gratitude to the student volunteers who have worked tirelessly behind the success. A special thanks to the engineering cell and DTU studio for their constant support in the logistics and recording of this event. I would also like to thank all our deans, HODs, alumni, distinguished guests, faculty members, students, and all the participants, both in person and online, for your active participation. Your insightful engagement have made this session all the more meaningful and interactive. Lastly, to all the participants, let us continue to nurture the spirit of learning and always strive to push the boundaries of what is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. As we draw today's session to a close, we once again thank our distinguished speaker, and we hope that all the upcoming lectures of the Distinguished Speaker Series will continue to foster thought-provoking discussions, broaden our perspectives, and ignite the spirit of innovation in all of us. With these words, I thank you all once again for joining us this evening and invite you all for a high tea outside the auditorium. Thank you very much.